We are into Nehemiah. As if you remember, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah were one book originally, put together, and you could sort of see similarities as you go through. So back in Ezra, you had Zerubbabel, for the most part, was in charge of rebuilding the temple, and faced opposition, seemed to be reasonably successful, but then sort of story ends in a little bit weird downer note. Um, Same thing happens with Ezra. Ezra comes to rebuild the people, basically, the people of God, and build them up and bring them back to God. Um, and he sort of has success, and you'll see that kind of continues on into this book a little bit too. So, and then you have Nehemiah coming, and he's here to rebuild the city, right? So, excuse me. He arrives because he is the cupbearer of Artaxerxes, and he was sad because he had heard from some Israelites that had come back, and he mourned. And he has a prayer fairly similar to Ezra, a little bit shorter, but that same idea. And sort of says, we confess the sins we've committed, both I and our fathers, and continues on. And he does say that, you know, um, please remember what you told Moses. If you're unfaithful, I'll scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and carefully observe my commands, even though your exiles were banished to the farthest horizon, I'll gather them and bring them to the place where I chose to have them, chose to have my name dwell. So basically, he's praying to God, saying, please don't forget your promises, that if we return to you, then you will fulfill your promises going forward. So that's chapter one. And then chapter two is when he actually goes and asks for this permission. So he's in front of Artaxerxes, and Artaxerxes says, what's going on? You're my cupbearer. You don't look good. And he was saying, my people are in trouble, and Jerusalem is a mess. And it's sort of, he even says that later on, that we don't want to be embarrassed by the fact that Jerusalem is in ruins. So he tells the king. King says, "Sure, you go right ahead." And he gives them some letters and sends him. Interestingly, he does send him with officers and infantry and cavalry. So some people make note that that's important. Doesn't seem too big a deal to me, but like maybe not. He's not quite as faithful as Ezra. But he hears about all this and he travels. He gets there and he gets up at night and basically does this kind of in secret to go and inspect the walls. So he goes out, makes a full loop. Interestingly, this is all of Nehemiah, but particularly this description as well, is very helpful in laying out Jerusalem, the historic. People that are sort of trying to find things and recreate archaeology, whatever. They use this description because he does sort of go place to place to place as he goes around. So it helps you organize what you're looking for as you're going. And some of these things are still in place today as he's going through. So he describes as he walks all the way around, and then he finally finishes and says, all right, fair enough. I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned. Come, let's rebuild Jerusalem's wall so that we will no longer be a disgrace. Right? And then he said, God's hand has been on me. And he told them what the king said. And they said, awesome, let's start. Right? Next line. When the three main villains in this part of the book, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, heard about this, they mocked and despised us and asked if they were rebelling against the king. So, and I gave them this reply, the God of heavens who will grant us success. So don't worry about the king. We are his servants and we start building, but you will have no share, right, or historic claim in Jerusalem. So one, he's drawing a bit of a line here and saying this is for the people of Israel. Two, it's definitely identifying them on the outside. So obviously, Geshem the Arab is, but both Sanballat and Tobiah are potentially, at least it could be indicated that they worship Yahweh ish. As we've talked already, some of these people worship Yahweh among other gods. So which is not really worshiping Yahweh, um, but they sort of might have considered themselves in some way connected to this effort. So I know that it says in my Bible that Sanballat's kids have names that would indicate that he worshipped Yahweh in some way, shape, or form. But you can see here Nehemiah is not having anything to do with that and saying, no, no, no. You might be Samaritan or somehow connected or descended, but you are clearly apostate and you have no part in this rebuilding. So that doesn't make them friends, obviously, as we go on, but they were clearly enemies to begin with, anyways. I don't think they were ever going to be part of this rebuilding process. So he's just letting them know he knows that, and he's not too worried about it. So that's it. It's more of a historical. Well, the whole book is more of a history. Obviously, it's in the history section, but we'll get into a little bit more as we go on. But that is chapters 1 and 2. Have a blessed time reading the Word of God.